Hey guys, what's going on? CryptoVatsik here with another TA video for you today. As always, nothing of what you're about to see is considered financial advice and they're just my opinions. If you enjoy this content, I would really appreciate it if you gave this video a like and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. With that said, let's get right into it. Okay, today's video is going to be an in-depth analysis on Solana. Okay, so let's get into the current price action here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a snippet here from my prior video really quickly to recap my prediction back in January when we were trading underneath the macro range. So my expectation is that I said I was going to expect an area of consolidation or an area of a form of reaccumulation, but I had said I was completely fine with this and remained bullish so long as we held above that macro market structure break. And so fair enough, let's drop back to the current price chart. You'll notice we pretty much got that precisely. Consolidation, technically a downtrend, yes, but ultimately those key criteria being holding that market structure break on a macro level here at around 15.5 from the highs of that prior accumulation area. We got multiple attempts at breaking that resistance diagonal on this reaccumulation phase, with our fourth attempt currently on this current candle, forming another channel here in and of itself, consolidating underneath resistance. We filled up the inefficient balance on this dump candle or capitulation event with the high sweeping up here at resistance. So I had said this is perfectly fine, it's perfectly healthy. It was what I kind of expected. I didn't expect us to immediately reclaim that range low, as it was a high time frame significant area of resistance. And I talk about reaccumulation phases in altcoins a lot, and I prefer to see a reaccumulation phase just like this because it allows the asset to accumulate the strength and that buy pressure that is needed to break high time frame resistance and eventually get that supply pinch where price can really run hard and gain that momentum needed. So as it stands, we are still trading underneath resistance. You know, take it with a grain of salt with these diagonals. There's many different ways you can allocate them to support your bias. So just stay as objective as possible when using diagonals as opposed to horizontals. So my thesis at this point is that we are in that reaccumulation phase and we are powering up for a break of high time resistance and to essentially reclaim that range low and start trading back inside of that previous macro range that we had. And so let's drop down to the daily quickly. So you'll see that range that I have here, okay, is taken from the swing high here that we had back in May 2022 down to our swing low. And at the time when I had identified this range, we were trading somewhere in here at the time, I think. We had this SFP from that prior high, was not able to reclaim the EQ, and then of course got our capitulation FTX collapse here back in November last year. So that's fine, but it doesn't mean that the range just disappears, because whether you drew the range or not, you'd still be likely looking at just a simple SR level from these prior lows that eventually got lost on the capitulation event, trading now on the underside of those prior lows. So simple SR theory, we want to flip that resistance level into support. We had a really interesting bottom area of accumulation down here with minimal volume after a pretty harsh capitulation event where the certainty or uncertainty was pretty high for Solana. And then of course we come back up out of that range. We start testing the underside of high time frame resistance. And like I said, we came down, retest that liquidity zone or that market structure break from these prior highs of that range, from these highs right there. So again, just a reminder, a market structure break being a break of structure in price or break of that trend. So if you have a downtrend like this, lower highs, lower lows, it's a downtrend until you get that higher high, which is your break in structure. Then you're looking for a retest of the prior lower high to confirm a trend reversal. So here, essentially, I know it looks different, but you got a technical lower high, and essentially your lower high down here. And the trend continued down until you ultimately got that trend reversal and on a high time frame came back down, retesting that market structure break here with a confirmation that it will hold, which is this retest essentially right there. So anyways, now what you start seeing is you start seeing a lot of traders posting charts on Solana again, and people are talking about it again. They're interested. Now they're starting to wonder if it's going to have potential in the next cycle. They're saying the chart doesn't look too bad anymore, and they're right, it doesn't. It actually looks pretty good in my opinion. So, you know, fundamentals aside, if we look at it purely from an objective technical standpoint, this to me looks like consolidation under resistance. The vice versa is bearish consolidation over support, which you would classify this price action over here as, okay? So bearish consolidation until you break down, breaking that support level, which was that range low, until now what looks to be consolidation or accumulation under resistance, which is also just that range low. in red here. So whether we have a little bit more consolidating to do is to be determined still. You know, patience is going to be key here. Like I said, we've formed this range. We've got a channel high and a channel low here that is being respected still at the moment. Many wicks up here at these candle highs, definitely still price suppression occurring. So I'm completely fine if we get a short-term correction back down towards this exponential moving average. And I also like this level here that we've reclaimed, which sits at just under $20. So it wanted to hold that level back here. We had a pretty nasty deviation below that level here, which was that retest of the MSB that I covered, with a prompt reclaim of that level and now acceptance, or what looks to be acceptance, above it, with another pump up making a fresh new high. So it really wants to stay above that $20 level. And personally, I really want it to stay above that level if we're going to start putting pressure on high time frame resistance here in red. So basically every little high and every test of that area near red is just knocking on the door, putting pressure on it, and eventually it will break. So short term, perhaps we get one more deviation above that range high with a bit more of a correction, like I said, back down towards this $20 level, and the breakout origin of this leg here occurring right here after price compressed here. Really boring price action, however, maintaining that $20 level, and then expansion. So possibly due for a light correction, like I said, come back down, test the moving average, get a nice reclaim of this prior high here. Simple SR theory, we've broken that high. Now that prior high should act as support and then bounce off of that level to eventually break out of this channel high. That's the first trigger for us to start breaking high time frame resistance in red, is to break out of this channel high with clear high time frame candle closes, such as 12-hour or the daily, and of course as usual with some sort of back test, and then really start to pressure red at that point for breakout. Something like this does make sense to me. Of course, this could be expedited and it could happen a lot sooner, in which case then the same criteria remains. You break that channel high, you get some sort of retest, and then you start testing red for a breakout higher, which would be a high time frame reclaim of that range low from that macro range, basically trading back inside of the bottom 50th percentile and eventually the upper 50th percentile. So those are a couple different scenarios that I definitely see very possible. I'm leaning towards about a 40% chance for each of these scenarios occurring. 40% chance for scenario 1 expedited, and 40% chance for scenario 2 a little bit more prolonged. I think I would honestly prefer scenario 2. Like I said, it would allow accumulation to build up for a much more significant supply pinch later, whereas if we just continue to pump straight up, the correction later will be a little bit steeper in my opinion. Now scenario C, which I think has about a 20% probability of occurring, would be if we get a major dump on Bitcoin or Ethereum, like a knee-jerk reaction dump, not a consolidation, which would actually be better for alts on Bitcoin, but I'm talking like a midterm trend reversal. Then I see essentially this channel high definitely holding, and I see us potentially coming down and putting this critical support level at $20, origin of the breakout of the current leg we're on, to the test. That would be essentially red flag number 1 if it is lost. The next red flag for me would be if we start to show weakness near the bottom of the channel high, channel low. If we start showing weakness around that level, then I think we're definitely going to come down and test this prior low that we had back here in March, and essentially what is a retest for the second time of that market structure break from this previous accumulation range high that we've had back here in yellow. If this scenario happens, I essentially want to see a major buyback after that point, with a reclaim of that $20 level really quickly to start pushing red and out of the channel high to reclaim high time frame resistance much quicker if we do end up getting a scenario like this. A scenario like this would be fine, again, so long as we do not breach this 15.5 level. We will make that bold and we'll make it red. And I've been trying to coin the term directional control point, otherwise my DCP level, meaning above my DCP, directional control point, bulls are in control. Anything essentially in green, in my opinion, even though we're under resistance, bulls are in control. It's in an uptrend from our low to our next major low, which of course is a higher low. We are consolidating in a channel-like formation, putting pressure on resistance on a high time frame frame level. We've made a macro market structure break out of our bottom range, and that to me is my DCP point. Below my DCP level, anything below that, I will change my bias to pretty bearish, and the bears are fully back in control. Two reasons is it will invalidate the market structure break that we had, okay, when we retested it here, and it will invalidate the bullish trend of our higher low here, having made a lower low, okay, which is the definition of a downtrend. So this price action here that I've drawn is the most I will accept, essentially a double bottom or a double tap of that market structure break, all the while holding my DCP with a strong bullish reaction thereafter. I would accept it. But like I said, this scenario less likely or has less probability of occurring than the first two scenarios that I covered a second ago. So now let's look upwards, assuming all goes to plan and we do in fact reclaim that range low and break out of high time frame resistance. Essentially then I will be considering it to have reclaimed this macro range from a range high to a range low. As you know, I like quarter ranges. So mark out the quarter range right here. We'll make it dotted. Actually, it's probably hard to see. We'll make it dashed. And then we'll mark out the upper quarter range in the upper 50th percentile of the range up here. So we got range high, we got the upper quarter range, range EQ, lower quarter range, and then of course our range low. Okay, so 4 significant areas of interest for me. I will use those areas of essentially first areas of interest confluent with other prior highs or levels of structure that I can find in here in price action, but without making the chart too messy. On account that we break red and reclaim it with high time frame candle closes above it, then we start looking at the first lower quarter range here at just under $35 with possible some consolidation at that level to a break to the upside towards the EQ here at $42. Lots of interest at that level. The EQ of this, even though we haven't traded at it for some time, if we just look left, there's lots of interaction with either lows originally, and then once it was flipped as resistance, lots of highs, really struggling to reclaim it. So I think the EQ here at $42 is going to be a very critical level, possibly a steeper correction from that level back down to the lower quarter range at that point. And perhaps, you know, even a retest of that range low. On a macro level, this is a major rally up to that EQ. Up to $42 is major. Okay, it's almost 100%. So, you know, at the time, depending on the, you know, the market sentiment or the market as a whole where we're at, it could be due for a correction down to the range low, which was a reclaimed level, which maybe at that point has not been retested yet, to start working on our next leg up to reclaim that EQ and start testing the upper quarter range, which sits at $50. Because my thesis is there will be a macro correction like this that are going to make retail traders and investors sweat. They're going to think that, you know, the bottom is not in necessarily and we're coming back down to the lows, when in reality we've reclaimed a very significant high time frame resistance level. But either way, something like this would make sense for me. You know, a rally that pushes a little bit longer than people might expect and then eventually corrects a little bit deeper than we might expect. From a technical standpoint, it would make sense, but it could take many different forms. You know, perhaps we do end up getting above red and we get that correction right here at the lower quarter range and we start chopping down towards the range low here, and that's our retest of that range low and high time frame resistance that's been reclaimed now on this break to a new high. And then from that point on, then we reclaim the quarter range and then start taking the EQ to the test. So many different forms it can, you know, shapes it can take, but it's important to remember all the criteria remain the same. You know, break of the channel high first, maintenance of that $20 level, maintenance of the channel low, and absolutely maintenance of the DCP. Then if that all checks off, price has essentially nowhere to go but up. Reclaim high time frame candle closes above red resistance, otherwise known as the channel or range low. Then you start targeting lower quarter range or the EQ, or potentially some of these previous highs that we had for deviations or wicks to the upside, sweeping those levels of supply. So whether price comes up to the EQ or up to this quarter range, I think a retest of that range low, red reclaimed level is on the table. Then you just start looking further and further. EQ, upper quarter range, range high eventually at some point. So, you know, essentially we've got our targets, we've got our criteria for those targets to be met. We've identified the context of current price action, consolidating within a range, putting pressure under resistance, and most importantly, we've got our invalidations. Invalidation 1, invalidation 2, and 3 being the ultimate invalidation. So you know, the stars are aligning, so to speak, and I think Solana has the potential to come back stronger than ever. I want to thank you all for joining. I really appreciate the engagement. Let me know what you think in the comments. Where's Solana headed? Are we headed to all-time highs, or is this the chart of a dead altcoin? Let me know. Otherwise, you can follow me on Twitter at CryptoVatsik. Again, thanks. If you enjoyed this, please give the video a like, and if you're new, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Catch you next time.
Sick, thicker than most of these tricks. I got my mind on making money, but you stuck on these fake bitches. I stay blunted and never fronted, and I doubt if I do. Cause if I did, then I get beat up by my fucking crew. A real nigga since you figure that you ready to box. You catching knots from my nigga Freddie Fox. You really don't want none from pockets. I be strapped with a Glock and throw things like I'm born to box. I hit this motherfucking gin and I'll be all in.